These are assembly instructions for my Christmas themed ATM. So I'm starting with the roller, and this is the piece that the money is going to be wrapped around. I have little tiny tabs on both sides, and I'm just folding down on all of those tabs. I'm putting my piece down on my craft mat, and I'm running my bone folder just along that score line just to smooth out the edges between those little tabs. So this is going to be the inside of my piece, and this is going to be the outside. So I'm taking this long narrow strip and I'm inserting it into the cutout that's in the center of my panel, and I'm flipping my piece over, putting a little bit of glue right under that tab, and then I'm laying it flat on my panel, and I'm using my craft mat to make sure that that strip is laying down nice and straight. I've selected this shape because the diameter of it is smaller than the diameter of my roller. I'm just using this to help curve my cardstock to create the shape that I'm looking for. So I have a score line at the end of this piece. I'm not folding on that score line. That score line is just there for placement. So I've put glue from the score line to the edge of my piece, and I'm going to roll the other end over. I'm gluing the cut edge of that piece right to that score line, and I'm making sure that the score lines are even on each end. So I have one of these rounds that has a hole in the center. I'm putting glue all over it. I have these tabs pointing towards the center of my shape. I have these tabs pulled away from the center of my shape. So with the glue side downwards, I'm just dropping that circular piece into the bottom of my shape, and I'm pressing down with my bone folder just to make sure that my glue takes. Now if you don't have a bone folder, you can use a ruler or something with a nice clean straight edge. So next I'm folding in all those tabs that are at the other end, and I'm putting glue on one of those tabs. I'm going to take my circular piece that has a cutout in the center, and I'm just placing my tab so that the cut edge of the outer circle is right along the score line on that tab. And then I'm just going in and putting glue on the rest of those tabs, and I'm folding that round over, and I'm going in with my reverse tweezers, and I'm pinching those tabs into position until my glue takes. So now I'm going to flip my piece over. And since my bone folder is too big, I'm going to go in with a craft dowel. I'm just applying a little bit of pressure to make sure that those tabs are stuck down. So next I have two circular pieces that have smaller holes in the center, and then I have all these octagonal shaped reinforcement pieces. I'm covering those small shapes in glue and gluing them onto my circular pieces, making sure that that center circle is clear. I'm flipping my piece over and adding a second reinforcement piece on the other side. And I'm doing that with both circular pieces. I'm putting glue all over the end of that shape that I've just assembled. I'm taking one of my reinforced pieces and just gluing it right over the end like so. I'm applying a little bit of pressure to make sure that glue takes. And I'm doing that on the other end as well, covering those tabs with glue and then covering them with my reinforced piece. So next I'm assembling the box that holds my cylinder piece. I'm just folding down on all the score lines for it. And then I have this rectangle that has tabs on each end. I'm folding down on the tabs. This is the inside of my box. This is the outside. I'm putting glue from the score line to the end on the side tab of that rectangular piece. And then I'm just gluing the cut edge right above the score line of that bottom tab. And I have more of those reinforcement pieces that I'm going to glue onto the holes on the outside of my box. I'm just putting glue on them and gluing them down just like I did for the cylinder piece. I want to make sure that those inner holes are stacked up right on top of one another. I'm flipping my piece over, and then I'm gluing more reinforcement pieces on the inside of my box. I'm folding down on that score line that's at the end, and I'm putting glue all over it, and then I'm folding the other side over until the cut edge is right on the score line of the tab. So that bottom score line should be right at the cut edge of that panel. So next I have these two tabs that are at the top of my piece. I'm putting glue on both of them, and I'm tucking them inwards, folding them down, and I want the cut edge of my side panel to be right along the score line of the tab on both sides. So next I have this tray piece. I'm folding down on the outer score lines for it. There's a scored rectangle on this piece. I'm not folding down on those scores. Those are just for placement. And I'm folding the sides of this tray upwards so that I can still see my score lines. So I have that scored rectangle towards me, and I'm folding up on those two tabs on either side of it and putting glue all over them. And then I'm raising up that front panel and gluing the tabs to it on either side. I want the cut edge on each side to be right along the score line of the tabs. And then I have that piece that I created to hold my cylinder. So my piece has a small window on one side and a larger window on the other. I want the smaller window facing me, and I want the two tabs on the bottom to be folded towards the outside of my shape. And I'm putting glue on those tabs. And I'm also putting glue just at the bottom on the same panel as the small window. And then I'm inserting my piece inside my box. So I'm gluing down both tabs on either side, and I want the edge of the tabs to be right along the score line of the sides of my tray. I'm adding a little bit of extra glue at the front, and I'm gluing the front of my tray to my panel. And so then I'm going to rotate my piece, and I'm putting glue on the two remaining tabs for my tray piece. Bringing the sides together, I want the cut edge against the score line of my tab. So next I have this wooden craft dowel, and it's approximately 1/4 inch in diameter, maybe a little bit smaller. And I'm putting a little tick mark at 5.5 inches, and I'm cutting it at that length. In the file, you'll find two little thin strips. For the birthday version of this, I had put double-sided tape all over these strips, and I had wrapped them around the dowel to keep it in place. I've left those pieces in the file, so if that's what you want to do, they're there for that. But for this version, I'm using two small rubber bands, and I'm just wrapping my rubber bands around the end of my wooden dowel, tightly enough so that they don't fall off. And then I'm taking my cylinder piece and I'm just tucking it into my cylinder holder. And then I'm inserting my wooden dowel into the hole on both my holder and my cylinder piece, and then bringing it through the other side. Then I'm taking my other rubber band and wrapping it around the end of the dowel. So this is where you'd be using your piece of cardstock with double-sided tape if you elect to do it that way. So those rubber bands being there prevent my dowel from slipping out of the holder. So next I have the piece that's the front of my ATM machine. I'm folding down on all the score lines for it, and there are lots of them. So this is my computer screen, and then this is the area where my money gets dispensed. I have two pieces of foil craft board that I am gluing over the cutouts that are in this panel. So there's the small one at the top. It's a very small opening, so I'm making sure that my piece is exactly on top. And then I have the long piece for where my money is dispensed. So I'm making sure that the cutout in the center of that craft board is exactly over the cutout in my green panel. So I have my two print and cut panels. One of them is my ATM keyboard. My screen for my ATM is actually my sentiment. I'm going to start at the top. I have these two tabs on either side, and I'm tucking them behind that top panel and then just gluing them down like so. And then below I have a triangular tab, and then I have this tab that has a little cutout in the center of it. I'm tucking them behind my panel. I'm making sure that that cut edge is right along the score line, and I'm gluing both those tabs to the back of my panel. And I'm doing that on the other side as well, just putting glue on both those tabs, tucking them in behind my panel. I want the cut edge of that piece to be right along the score line of both tabs, and then I'm just gluing them in to the back. I have this score line that's right below the dispensing part of my ATM. I'm folding it upwards, and then I have two tabs on each side at the bottom. So I'm putting glue on those tabs, folding both tabs under, and gluing them to the bottom panel. So next I have this one strip with 3 score lines on it. I'm folding on the center score line, basically folding it in half, and I'm folding on the 2 other score lines at the end of my panel, but I'm folding them away from one another, like so. I'm flipping my green piece over, and then I'm putting glue from the score line to the end on one of those tabs, and then I'm placing my tab right above the cutout that's on my green piece. And then I'm putting glue from the score line to the end, on the other end of that piece. So I'm using my Cricut tool and putting it through the hole as a spacer. And then I'm gluing that other tab down on the other side of the opening. So next I have the front panel for my machine, and I'm just folding down on all the score lines for it. And so now I'm going to take my green piece. There's a frame created by these tabs. So I have a tab at the top and a straight edge at the bottom. I'm inserting those tab pieces in that rectangular cutout that's on my piece, pulling those tabs through on all 4 sides, and then I'm putting glue on the underside of all 4 of those frame pieces, and I'm adhering them to my gray panel. So now I'm going to flip my piece and I'm just going in with my bone folder and I'm just spreading my glue on all 4 sides. This is the wider version of my ATM machine. The body of the machine itself is in 2 pieces instead of 1. So I'm just folding down on the score line for the larger piece. So I'm putting glue on that long side tab from the score line to the edge. And then I have the mirror image of the front panel and I'm gluing the straight edge of it right to that score line. I want them nice and even at the top and at the bottom, and the cut edge has to be right on that score line. So I have the back and the sides of my machine, and then I have the front of my machine. I'm going to put glue all along the tab from the score line to the end on that upper tab and that lower tab. And then I'm gluing the cut edge of that panel right to the score line on my tab, so it follows along all the way. So it curves here. I'm making sure that it's glued in properly. I'm just flip my piece over and I'm going in with my bone folder and just spreading that glue. And so this is my bottom piece. I'm folding down on the score lines to create tabs on 3 of the 4 sides. So I'm putting glue on the long tab and I'm gluing it to the front of my machine. So this is going to be the bottom of my box. I want the cut edge of my machine to go right along the score line of that tab, and I want the score lines on each side to be even. So this is the front of my machine. I have this side tab and I'm covering the side tab with glue, gluing that to the side panel. Next I'm putting glue on the short tab that's on the left and the long tab that's at the top. And then I'm tucking those tabs inwards and I'm just gluing them, matching up the score lines. So the score line at the top should match with the cut edge of the back of my box, and the cut edge of the side of my box should match up with the score line on the tab that's at the side of my box. And I can still go in from the inside and spread the glue. So now I have all those tabs on the right hand side of my machine. I'm putting glue on the one that's at the top, and then the long tab and the short tab below it. And then I'm folding this side piece over and gluing it in place. And again, this side curves a little bit, so it's a little tricky. So now I have the tab that's at the bottom on the right hand side. So I'm just putting glue all over that tab and I'm just gluing that tab in place. At the back of my machine, I have that panel, and then I have this piece that has a little tab on the right hand side. So I'm just folding down on the score line for that little tab. I'm putting glue from the score line to the edge all over that bottom panel. And then I'm taking my panel, making sure that that little tab is on my right hand side. And I'm matching up the lower left hand corners and then the lower right hand corner. And so there's a little bit of an overlap at the top, which prevents your door from falling into the box. So next I have the decorative panels for either side of my machine. So I went with a candy cane theme. So I have my white layer, my red layer, and then my foil craft board layer. And I'm gluing all 3 layers together for both sides. So once I have my 3 layers glued together, I'm covering the corresponding side of my machine in glue. And I want my sides to be flush on the bottom and at the back. And there's a 1/4 inch border at the front and the top of my machine. And I'm gluing the right side in the exact same way. So next I'm using a 3/8 inch clear Velcro fastener. So I'm matching up the 2 sides of my Velcro dot. I'm releasing the liner on one of the adhesive sides of my Velcro dot and positioning it right on the underside of that tab that's on the back access panel. Then I'm taking the liner off the other side. I'm closing my door so it's exactly in position, folding my little tab over, then I'm going in with my Cricut tool and I'm separating those 2 pieces of Velcro. And then I'm going in there and pinching those Velcro pieces in place to make sure they stay put. So then I have my Christmas sign. So I've used some of that gold foil craft board for the backdrop of my sign. And I've used some of the green foil craft board for the offset layer for the words. I've used white vinyl for the snowflakes and red vinyl for the words Christmas and ATM. And this is the little stand for my sign, and I'm just folding down on all the score lines for it. I'm just putting glue between those 2 middle score lines, and I'm matching up the little notch that's in the middle. It's very small. It's that little notch that you see between the T and the M of ATM. It's going to help me center my sign, and I just want the bottoms to be flush. I'm folding those panels back. I want to glue this on top of my box, so I'm putting glue on the underside of both of those tabs, and then I'm trying to center it horizontally as best I can. I'm folding them so they're at a 90 degree, so those tabs are facing one another, and I'm doing my best to center it at the top of my ATM. I'm going to open the panel door, and then I can go in from the back And I have my little VIP card, and these are cut out of red craft board, and I applied the letters with more of that white vinyl as I used for the snowflakes. I'm just gluing the back and front together, and I'm inserting that into the cutout that's on my machine like so. Because it's Christmas, I figured I'd make a bow, taking a piece that looks like swimming goggles, and I'm using my bone folder to shape the ends. So I'm using some foam tape, and I'm putting it on the underside of the center of my bow piece and releasing the liner from my foam tape. I'm gluing one side to the halfway mark on my bow, and then gluing the other side on the other halfway mark. So then I have this little rectangle that goes over the center, and then I'm just folding it over. On the underside, over that seam, I'm putting some more of that foam tape, and I'm taking the liner off, and then I'm putting that piece back in place. I'm putting a little bit of glue and gluing it down. I'm putting foam tape on the top of my tail piece where I have the seam at the underside of my bow. I'm just positioning that over my tail piece, and then I'm using yet another piece of double-sided tape. And this one is going to be to attach it to my machine. I think I'm just going to put it at the front. You don't want it to go past the line here because that's where the money comes out. And then I have my pull. So my pull is 80-pound cardstock. You can actually make this heavier if you wish. And then I have some white vinyl, and I'm just applying that to my pull tab. I'm starting to love my decision to put the rubber bands instead of the cardstock because I put my wheel backwards. I want that strip to go over my cylinder as I insert it into my holder. And then I'm inserting my dowel. I'm gonna put my rubber band back on. Since this is a larger version of the ATM, I wanted my bottom panel to be a little bit more substantial. So I cut a piece of green craft board. I'm just gluing my machine down to it as a base, trying to center it as best I can on that panel. And these are my Cricut bucks. These are just a placeholder for actual cash. Everywhere I read said it's fine to use Scotch tape on most types of currency. Let's just pretend this is actual money. I'm gluing my bills end to end, putting Scotch tape on both sides. And on the last one, I'm gluing it to my pull tab. So obviously my pull tab for this one is much wider than the bills that I've made. I don't want any sticky from the tape exposed because it can interfere with the rolling of the money. And then I'm going to glue my money at the end of that long strip. It works best if you center that piece on your currency. I'm gluing it on the front and on the back, and then I'm rolling up my cash. I'm grabbing my box, opening the access panel at the back, threading my pull tab through the slot at the front, and then I'm closing that back panel. And so then once you gift it, the recipient just pulls the money out. If you want to test it and then reload it, you have access through the back. Just pull it out and then just roll up your money again. And then just close that access panel.